And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with the Game Boy Geek.
Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today, get ready. Get the little thimble on your thumb, get some sewing together, get your sewing machine, get your threads. We're gonna be tackling quilts. Today we're looking at a game called Quilt Show from Rio Grande Games. Just came out around Gen Con-ish or just after in 2014. Plays 2 to 4 players. It says up to 75 minutes. It's 30 to 75 minutes where you are gathering fabric and creating block tiles and putting on quilt shows. So let's take a look and I'll see you on the other side. In Quilt Show, everybody starts off with a really cool shield that they'll be putting up. They'll be putting hidden cards and hidden quilt tiles in during the game. Now when it's stood up behind that shield, they will have 3 little extra point tokens that are given, and you'll get 4 fabric cards. These are usually held in your hand, but you can put them behind your shield if you like. And this is sort of what the shields look like when they're set up and you're looking at the other players. It looks pretty cool. So here we have the game set up for 4 players. What we have is a bunch of block tiles of different quilts. We have some time tiles and we have some fabric cards. We also have some random scoring that will happen at the end of the quilt show. So what you're trying to do is this game plays over 3 quilt shows or 3 rounds. And during a round, we will be playing until each of these time tokens is taken up. So what can you do on your turn? On your turn, you can do one of 2 things. Well, we've already started with 4 fabric cards. And what you can do is either pick up fabric cards, or you can play fabric cards to build these block tiles of quilts. Now if we look at the fabric cards I was dealt at the beginning of the game, this one is just green. It's just green and only has the green logo. This one can be used for yellow or green because it has both fabrics, and you can see it has both logos there, just red and purple or blue. Now here look, we've got green and yellow, we've got blue and green. This is tie-dye, so this one can be, this is essentially a wild. So you can take this and use this for anything, and these are all just solid colors. Now you'll see we have 6 different types of patterns of block tiles here. The amount of these tiles will depend on how many players. With 4 players, you'll play with them all. With less players, you take certain entire stacks of block tiles, so there'll be less with less players. And we look at these different stacks. Each of these stacks actually has the same exact pattern in them, but they have different colors and they're randomly shuffled. So we have 6 different patterns, and each column has the same patterns but different colors, and they all have different points. So if we look at here, this one is 2 points, 3, 5, 5, and 3. So on your turn, again, you're either taking cards or you're playing cards for block tiles. If you're going to take cards, you can take up to 3 cards. Now, if you can take them over here, or you can take them off the top. Very similar to Ticket to Ride if you're familiar with that game. So let's say I'm going for the yellow or greenish type of things. I could take this yellow and green card and take it and put it in my hand, and out comes another card. Ooh, another yellow and green card. Maybe I'll take that one because I'm really going for that. And I could take a 3rd card. Maybe I take this one right here, and that would be my turn because I've taken 3 cards. Now this wild is open wild. If at the beginning of my turn I take this open wild, that means I can only take 1 more card instead of usually you can take 2 more cards because you can usually take 3 cards in total. But if you take an open wild, you can only take 1 more card, and that card cannot be an open wild. You might be able to still draw one off the top, but those are the rules for drawing cards. So after my first turn, in my hand, I've got 3 cards that I could be used for either yellow or green. I've got a yellow or blue, a green or blue, a green, a red, and a blue or purple. So on my next turn, I might be able to get a block tile. Now if you remember, I had a lot of yellows. This yellow one here is worth 5 points. Now depending on the points each of these are, is gonna tell you how many fabric cards you need in order to build that block tile. Now on the back of your shield, you'll see the amount of cost of cards depending on the value of the block tiles. Now the block tiles can be either 2, 3, or 5 points as we showed you, and you're going to need either 1, 2, or 3 fabric cards of at least that color in order to get that block tile. So in that yellow block tile, the one that was like this, it was 5 points, so I would need 3 fabric cards with yellow to get this block tile. So on my next turn, I could spend my 3 fabric cards, put them to the discard pile, and I could take this block tile and I would put it right behind my shield. Now you can buy, when you do buy block tiles, you can buy as many as you want. So for example, I also see a 2 blue, and I only need 1 card that's blue to get this. So I can then give this card and get this block tile. Now every time I take a block tile, I'm also going to take one of these time tokens and put it in front of me. It's sort of the, so I did 2 block tokens there, so I took 2 of those. Now this sort of is a timer of the round, because you will continue to do what I was just doing, grabbing cards or spending the cards for block tiles, until all of these are gone. When all these are gone, this will be the only one that's left. When the red one is taken, that is the end of the round, and then a quilt show is put on. Now at the end of the round, when the quilt show is getting ready to start, you behind your shield are going to designate which quilts you're actually putting in and submitting for the show. There's 2 types of quilts you can build in this game. One is called a sampler quilt. This is a quilt that has all of the same color, but it does not matter the patterns. Those ones are usually harder to get. The other one is called a scrap quilt, and this is using all of the same patterns, but it doesn't matter how many of the colors you use or multiple colors, multiple of the same. So these are 2 legitimate quilts that you can build. Now you look on the back of the shield, it shows you the different size quilts you can build. You can build a 1x3, which is a table runner. This is a 1x3 because there's 3 and it's only 1 high. This you can do 2x2, 2x3, 3x3. Now this one is 3x2, as you can see here. And so we could build that 2x3 right here. It's a lap quilt. At the beginning of the game, some of these may be removed depending on the amount of players, and each quilt show, depending on the amount of players are in the game, a certain amount of these will randomly get face up before you decide which quilts you're going to build. Now they range, I believe, from 4 to 15,000. After you see what the ranges are, that's when you can decide which quilts you're going to build. Because there might be a lot of really high ones and then just low ones, and you either want to have really good quilts, or maybe there's a lot of little mid-range ones, and maybe it's good to have a bunch of quilts. It depends, depending on what you've been seeing other people playing, how many quilts you think they're going to make, and how good you think your quilts are compared to them. You can decide to make or not make any of your quilts. So when we decide to make our quilts, you also have a couple of these little bonus tokens here. There's 1, 2, and 3, and they're one-time use. So maybe I think this quilt's good, but this one maybe needs a little bit of a bump. So I could put this on it, and then once everybody's done and everyone's ready, they lift up their shields and everyone compares the total points on their quilts. So for example, we have 5, 8, 10, 15, 20, 22. This is a 22-point quilt. This one is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we have a 12 point. So we go around and we see who has the highest one. The highest one will take the 15,000, and they will get money in this very terrible paper money. It's about the quality of Monopoly money. It's awful. I don't know why they put this in here. Should have been tokens or quilt tokens or something cooler. The paper money is terrible, but they get that money and this goes back out of the game, and so on and so forth. If 2 people tie, like if the 2nd and 3rd place tied, they would take these 2, add them, and then divide and then round down, and they'd get that much money, all and so forth until everyone's quilts are done. Now if you have if there were 6 of these in this 4-player game, if there were more than 6 quilts out, meaning someone played a quilt but didn't score it, that stays outside of their shield, so everybody can see it, and they know that this automatically is going to be entered to the next quilt show. So it kind of hurts them because everybody knows what they need to beat, at least for an open quilt for next show. Now that would be the end of the first quilt show. You would then reset up the round. Everything here stays the same like this. The block tiles, some of these patterns will start to run out, and then you essentially start up. The person who played the last one passes this to the player to the left. That player starts. All the timers get back in, and we just do the same exact thing we just did for 2 more rounds, and then whoever has the most money at the end of the game wins. And each quilt show, these will be turned over and shuffled, so you never know which values you're going to get for each of the 3 quilt shows. All right, well, there's Quilt Show. This is a pretty light family weight game. I'd say it's similar to the weight of Ticket to Ride. In fact, as I mentioned in the overview, a lot of the mechanisms in this is like Ticket to Ride, where you're grabbing the cards and new ones are coming out, and you can take a few ones, and on your turn you're either grabbing the cards or you're playing the cards, just like in Ticket to Ride, except there's obviously no board like Ticket to Ride and things like that. So it's very Ticket to Ride-ish level of difficulty and the feeling you get when you play the game, which means, for me, I thought it was pretty enjoyable. I liked picking up the fabrics. I got mad when people took the ones I wanted, especially those block tiles. So overall, I really did like this for a light game. Now, I gotta be honest, bringing this game out with 4 guys is a little weird. And so I'm not sure that will happen very often, but I would love to bring this game to my family outings and play with my mom and my sister-in-law, my niece, maybe a nephew. So it's not something I'm gonna pull out all the time just because of the theme, but I do like the game. It's quite enjoyable, so I think it is good for families. So overall, I did like it. So I like the feeling of trying to gather the right fabric cards. I like the feeling of the decisions of which quilts to make. I thought was one of the more interesting things, where you're kind of keeping track of what people have been taking and which block tiles and what points they've been taking, and you got to decide, and then once those different values come out for the quilt show, you got to decide, based upon those values, should I not do one of my quilts this round and just try to build for it for next round? Or should I really just go for one big quilt this round, or should I go for 2 small quilts, depending on what's going out there? And that was some interesting decision making. So overall, I think I really do think it's a fun game. I think it's good for families. Again, the theme may or may not throw you off. So some people will not play this game on theme alone, maybe. I didn't mind it. I thought it was kind of fun. I did have a few problems with the game, mostly the time it took to play it. It does say 30 to 75 minutes, and with a 4-player game, I say 75 minutes is probably about accurate, which for me, I felt like it did overstay its welcome a little bit. Now, it does feel a little repetitive, where you're putting on 3 quilt shows, and you're kind of doing the same thing for a big round. By the way, I like the action of taking those tiles. Every time you build a block tile, you take those time tiles, and you can see how the round's going, and you can see when it's going to end. And there's a lot of tension there at the end of each round. And, oh, can I get one more? Can I get more one? Oh no, he took 2 block tiles. It's over. Oh man, you jerk. So there is a lot of tension towards the end of the rounds, and I like that. But it does feel like you're doing a lot of the same thing for the 3 rounds. The thing that does combat that a little bit, though, is, as I mentioned before, the decision as to whether you're going to make one or not. And that does combat sort of the repetitive feeling that you get from it. The other thing I didn't like, again, is the overall time. I think for 4-player game, 75 minutes was about right. For me, it just felt a little too long. Now, there are some variants in the rules that you could play a shorter game, just do 2 quilt shows. But I feel like 3 is the right amount of shows, because it's like, if you do just 2 and you just have a bad show, you're pretty much, you can't come back. And if you shorten the time, then that didn't feel right either. So I think the amount of tiles that are taken per round is right, and I think the number of rounds are right. It just feels a little long with 4 players. It's not as bad with 2 or 3, but with 4 it felt a little long. It overstayed its welcome a little bit. But other than that, it is a enjoyable game. If you like the light Ticket to Ride family style and the theme doesn't throw you off, this is one that is pretty fun, and I will be pulling out from time to time.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.